Rachel stood frozen in the parking lot of her apartment building in Burlington, Vermont. The cold autumn wind tugged at her coat, but she barely noticed. Her mother's voice had just cut through the phone like a knife. "Don't you dare come crawling back here expecting anything from us," her mother had snapped. Rachel's hand trembled as she clutched her phone. "Mom, I don't understand. What did I do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Can't we just talk?" "Talk?" her mother interrupted. "There's nothing to talk about, Rachel. You embarrassed this family with your selfish little stunt. We've decided you're no longer welcome here. Stay away. For good." The line went dead. Rachel stared at her screen, her breath catching in her throat. Just 3 days ago she'd been at her sister Olivia's engagement party. It was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, everything had fallen apart the moment Rachel refused to lie about her income. "Where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment and subscribe to this channel for more." Her mother had asked her to downplay her job, to pretend she didn't earn much, so Olivia would look more successful in front of her wealthy future in-laws. "What would it hurt to say you're struggling a bit?" her mom had whispered during the party. Rachel had blinked in disbelief. "You want me to lie about my career to make Olivia look good?" Now, walking slowly toward her apartment, Rachel felt the heaviness of her mother's rejection settle into her chest. The trees lining the street had started to turn gold, but she barely noticed. Rachel James was 27 years old. She worked as a senior account manager at Titan Robotics, a growing tech company that developed automated systems for factories. Her family thought she had a small desk job. The truth? Rachel was making more money than anyone in the family, including her parents. She wasn't rich, but she was comfortable. Her yearly salary was $85,000, not counting bonuses. She'd bought her apartment outright and had no debt. The irony was painful. Her mother, Patricia, had always been obsessed with keeping up appearances. Their family lived in a large home in a wealthy suburb. The curtains were always ironed, the floors always polished. Patricia hosted dinner parties, volunteered for charity boards, and made sure every family photo looked picture-perfect. Rachel's sister, Olivia, was the ideal daughter in her mother's eyes. Engaged, fashionable, always saying the right thing. Rachel had taken a different road. After college, she chose to focus on building her career. That made her the outsider in her own family. The trouble really began 5 years ago when Rachel accepted a job in manufacturing tech. Her mother had been horrified. "You're going to work in a factory?" she had asked, eyes wide. "It's not a factory," Rachel had said. "It's a robotics firm. I manage big projects and work with international clients." But Patricia never listened. Why not work somewhere normal? Like a bank or a law firm? No matter how many times Rachel explained, it didn't matter. In her mother's mind, anything outside the world of polished offices and name-brand careers wasn't good enough. So Rachel had kept quiet. She never talked about her bonuses or her successful deals. She didn't want to argue. As the years passed, the distance between Rachel's real life and her family's assumptions only grew wider. They still believed she was just scraping by. In reality, Rachel had built a strong savings account, invested in stocks, and even helped a friend start a small business. She never mentioned any of it. Patricia needed someone to feel superior to, and Rachel had been cast in that role. Then at Olivia's engagement party, the truth slipped out. Olivia's future in-laws asked Rachel what she did for work. She answered honestly, talking about her job at Titan Robotics and the large clients she managed. She didn't brag. She just told the truth. Her mother's smile faded instantly. Later that evening, Patricia pulled her aside. "You really couldn't help yourself, could you?" she hissed. "You just had to make Olivia look small." "I told the truth," Rachel replied. "That's all I did." And that truth had gotten her kicked out of the family. 2 days after that painful phone call, Rachel found herself driving past the house she had grown up in. She hadn't meant to stop, but her hands seemed to steer on their own. The house looked exactly the same, tall white shutters, trimmed hedges, and the same flower beds her mother had planted each spring. But something was different. The brass deadbolt on the front door gleamed like new. She parked and got out, trying her key just to be sure. It didn't work. She stood there in disbelief, heart pounding. Her childhood home, locked. Not metaphorically. Literally. A woman walking her dog across the street glanced over. "Rachel?" she called out cautiously. It was Mrs. Thomas, their neighbor for over 20 years. Rachel forced a smile and waved. But inside, shame burned hot in her chest. Had her mother told the neighbors she was no longer welcome? Rachel drove back to her apartment with a hollow feeling in her chest. The walls felt colder than usual, the silence deeper. That night, she stared at her phone for a long time before deciding to call Olivia. The phone rang and rang until voicemail kicked in. "Olivia, it's me," Rachel said quietly. "Please call me back. I don't know what I did that was so unforgivable, but Mom's locked me out of the house. I need to understand." She ended the call, knowing deep down it would go unanswered. Olivia had made her choice, and it wasn't Rachel. The next morning, Rachel tried to drown her thoughts in work. Her job at Titan Robotics was fast-paced and demanding, which normally helped her escape. But now, even the familiar buzz of client emails and spreadsheets couldn't block out the pain. Her coworkers noticed, but she smiled through it, pretending everything was fine. That Thursday afternoon, Rachel was called into her boss's office. Gregory Mason, the director of client strategy, was a kind man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and sharp instincts. "Rachel, I wanted to talk about the McKinley project," he said. "The client is extremely impressed with your work. They've specifically asked for you to lead their expansion plans next quarter." Rachel blinked in surprise. The McKinley contract was massive, nearly $3 million. It was the biggest account she'd ever touched. "That's incredible news," she said, forcing a smile. "Thank you." Gregory leaned back in his chair. "You've been off lately. Is everything okay?" She hesitated. "Some personal issues at home, but I promise it won't affect my work." "I believe you," he said gently. "Just know we're here for you if you need anything." Rachel nodded, grateful. In that moment, she realized something painful. Her professional life was thriving while her personal life was in ruins. That evening, as Rachel reheated leftover Thai food and tried to distract herself with a nature documentary, her phone rang. The number was local but unfamiliar. She nearly ignored it but answered at the last second. "Miss James," a male voice asked. "This is Benjamin Harris with Northwell Financial Services. I need to speak with you urgently about your family's financial matters." Rachel frowned. "I think you have the wrong person. I'm not involved in my family's finances." Benjamin paused. "Actually, you are. According to our records, you're listed as the primary beneficiary and emergency contact on both your mother's and sister's investment accounts." Rachel sat up straight. "That doesn't make sense. My mother just disowned me. The paperwork was filed 18 months ago," he explained. "I've been trying to reach Patricia James for weeks. Things have become serious and I can't go into detail over the phone." Rachel hesitated. "Can we meet in person?" "Tomorrow morning at 10 if you're available," he replied. He agreed, heart pounding. Rachel barely slept that night. Questions spun through her mind. Why had her mother listed her as a beneficiary if she hated her so much? What financial crisis was Benjamin talking about? The next morning was gray and rainy. She pulled on a coat and drove downtown to Northwell Financial Services, a modest office tucked between a bakery and a pharmacy. Benjamin Harris greeted her with a tired smile. He was in his mid-50s, soft-spoken, with kind eyes behind wire-framed glasses. "Thank you for coming, Miss James," he said, motioning for her to sit. "I'm afraid the situation is worse than you might think." He opened a thick folder and spread out several documents. "Your mother and sister have made a series of poor financial decisions over the past 2 years," he said quietly. "They've drained their retirement funds, mortgaged the family home, and invested heavily in what we now believe was a fraudulent investment scheme." Rachel's mouth went dry. "How much money are we talking about?" "Roughly $400,000, Benjamin replied. Rachel stared at the papers on the desk, her brain struggling to process the numbers. $400,000. Benjamin's voice remained calm. "They liquidated nearly everything to pour money into a firm called Grand Crest Capital. It promised unusually high returns through real estate investments." Rachel blinked. "Wait, I've never even heard of that." Most people hadn't. "It was a Ponzi scheme." He tapped the paperwork. "The founders were arrested 3 weeks ago. It's all over the news, but many victims haven't come forward yet." "And my mom and sister are 2 of them?" "I'm afraid so," he said. "And because they took out large loans against your mother's house to invest even more, the situation is especially dangerous." Rachel swallowed hard. So, what happens now? If no action is taken, they'll lose the house in less than 60 days. Rachel left the office feeling like the sidewalk was shifting beneath her feet. She walked to her car in a daze, clutching the folder Benjamin had given her. Inside were pages of statements, withdrawal records, and loan agreements. Her mother had mortgaged the family home almost to its full value. And Olivia had emptied her 401k. Rachel drove home in silence, her mind spinning. By the time she walked into her apartment, the shock had hardened into something else. Anger. They had cut her out, insulted her, locked her out of the house, and now she was supposed to swoop in and fix everything? She dropped the documents on her dining table and started Googling Grand Crest Capital. Fake office. Fake websites. Dozens of victims. An FBI investigation. Everything Benjamin had said was true. And her family had fallen for it completely. The deeper Rachel looked, the worse it got. The family home, once worth $600,000, now carried nearly $550,000 in loans. Her mother's retirement accounts. Gone. Olivia's savings wiped out. And yet, just a week earlier, Patricia had attended a fundraiser, smiling beside a table of hors d'oeuvres and posing for photos like nothing was wrong. Rachel pulled up a Facebook photo from that night. Her mother in a pearl necklace. A caption reading, "Lovely evening supporting the arts." She felt sick. That evening she called Benjamin again. "How long before the bank starts foreclosure?" she asked. "Based on their payment history, I'd say 6 weeks. Maybe less," he replied. "And I've already heard from 2 collection agencies this week." "Has my mother answered any of your calls?" "No. I don't think she's ready to face the truth." The next morning Rachel didn't hesitate. She drove straight to her mother's house and rang the doorbell. She didn't try her old key this time. After a long pause, the door opened. Olivia stood there in sweatpants and a loose bun, her eyes tired and puffy. "Rachel," she said, startled. "What are you doing here?" Rachel crossed her arms. "We need to talk. About Grand Crest. About Benjamin Harris. About everything." Olivia's face turned pale. "How do you know about that?" "Because I'm your emergency contact. The same sister you both kicked out of the family." Rachel stepped inside before Olivia could stop her. The foyer was quiet and Rachel immediately noticed something was off. Certain furniture pieces were missing. "The grandfather clock is gone. So is the rug from the living room," she said. Olivia looked down. "We sold a few things, to cover the last payment." Rachel's voice rose. "You mortgaged the house. You drained your savings. And now you're selling furniture? What were you thinking?" Olivia's eyes welled up. "It wasn't supposed to go like this. The guy at Grand Crest made it sound so real. He had charts. Numbers. Testimonials. Fake numbers. Fake people." "I know that now," Olivia whispered. "But at the time we thought it was the right move. Mom wanted to build security for retirement. I just wanted enough to cover the wedding without asking Derek's family for help." Rachel laughed bitterly. "So you risked your entire future for an illusion of success?" Olivia wiped her eyes. "We didn't know who else to trust. Benjamin kept calling and Mom was too scared to respond." Rachel sighed, glancing toward the hallway. "Is she home?" Olivia nodded. "She hasn't left her room since yesterday." 20 minutes later, Patricia finally emerged. She wore a silk robe and moved slowly like someone twice her age. When her eyes met Rachel's, something flickered across her face. Surprise, anger, maybe even relief. "I told you not to come here," Patricia said weakly. Rachel didn't flinch. "Benjamin told me everything. $400,000. Gone. The house. Hanging by a thread." Patricia sat down heavily on the edge of the couch. "How was I supposed to know they were lying? Margaret from the garden club recommended them. She said they were wonderful." "She lost everything too," Rachel replied. "I read the news articles. This wasn't some minor loss. This was your life savings." Patricia closed her eyes. "We thought we could finally be ahead for once." Rachel folded her arms. "Instead, you almost lost everything and dragged Olivia down with you." Olivia sat on the armrest beside their mother, her hands fidgeting in her lap. He explained everything so clearly. "We trusted him." Rachel pulled out her phone and showed them screenshots of the article. Headlines about fraud, mugshots of the founders, quotes from devastated families. All of this was fake. They made up buildings that never existed. Used investor money to pay fake returns. Patricia stared at the screen, her hands trembling. We're going to lose the house, aren't we? Unless something changes immediately, Rachel said. You owe more than it's worth. You can't make the payments. You have no assets left. Can't we declare bankruptcy? Olivia asked. Rachel paused. You could, but it wouldn't save the house. It just buys time and destroys your credit for years. The room fell silent, the weight of their reality sinking in like wet cement. Rachel looked around the living room. Childhood photos on the walls. A faded school portrait of Olivia. A drawing Rachel had made in second grade, still framed. The house felt like a museum of memories, but now it was more like a ticking time bomb. There is one option, Rachel said finally. But it would require big changes. Patricia's eyes narrowed. What kind of changes? Rachel exhaled slowly. I could help. I have the money to stop the foreclosure. I can work with Benjamin to reorganize your debt. But you'd have to accept some new rules. Rules? Olivia asked. Rachel nodded. No more secrets. No more pretending. And definitely no more treating me like a disappointment. The silence stretched. How much do you make? Patricia finally asked, her voice cautious. Enough, Rachel said. Let's just say I'm not the struggling girl you thought I was. I don't understand, Olivia said softly. You've never said anything. Because every time I tried I was shut down. Mom didn't want to hear about my job. You were too busy planning brunches and parties. Patricia looked away. Why would your name be on the accounts if we didn't even respect your choices? Rachel hesitated. Because Dad insisted on it. He trusted me. He said I was the only one who actually understood money. Patricia's eyes filled with something Rachel hadn't seen in a long time, shame. He was right, Rachel continued. But after the engagement party I honestly didn't think I owed you anything. You treated me like dirt. Olivia looked down. We were wrong, Rachel. We were so wrong. Rachel stared at them, her jaw tight. Then prove it. Let me help, but on my terms. She reached into her bag and pulled out a notebook. If I'm going to clean up this mess, we're doing things differently from now on. Patricia frowned. What does that mean? It means I'll pay what's needed to stop the bank from foreclosing, Rachel said. But from this point forward I'm in charge of the finances. Every dollar you spend goes through me. Olivia blinked. You're serious? Dead serious, Rachel replied. No more fancy dinners. No more throwing money around for status. We start fresh, with a budget, accountability and some humility. Patricia sat quietly for a moment, then whispered, This is humiliating. It's reality, Rachel said. And reality is the only thing that's going to save this house. She clicked her pen open and flipped to a fresh page. Let's talk numbers. Rachel began scribbling figures on the page. First, we cover the mortgage payments for the next 3 months to stop foreclosure. Then we settle the highest interest debts. Olivia leaned in. Can we really stop the bank? Yes, but only if we act fast, Rachel replied. Benjamin's already working on it. But you two need to cooperate completely. That means no more secret spending. Patricia shifted uncomfortably. I've already cut back. I haven't had my hair done in a month. Rachel raised an eyebrow. What about the $200 donation to the garden club auction? Her mother's face flushed. It was for appearances. You're about to lose your house, Mom. The garden club can survive without your check. Rachel circled the budget totals and underlined them. From now on, every purchase over $500 needs my approval. Every credit card gets locked. And both of you, yes both, are getting jobs. You want us to work? Patricia asked, stunned. At our age. You're 62, not 92, Rachel said firmly. You can do part-time retail or admin work. Olivia, you're still young. There's no excuse. Olivia looked horrified. But I've never worked full-time. I don't even know how to start. Then it's time to learn, Rachel replied. You don't get to live above your means while I clean up your mess. That's not how this works. Patricia shook her head. What will people say when they see me behind a store counter? They'll say you're being responsible, Rachel said. Which is more than they'd say if you end up homeless. The silence in the room was thick. Rachel looked at them both. This is your second chance. Don't waste it. Within 48 hours, Rachel and Benjamin halted the foreclosure proceedings by making an emergency payment to the mortgage lender. Rachel also paid off 2 high-interest credit cards and negotiated settlement plans for the others. I've set up automatic payments and frozen unnecessary spending, she told her mother and sister. Now all we have to do is stick to the plan. Patricia muttered something under her breath but nodded. Olivia seemed more willing. I applied for a receptionist position at the dental clinic near downtown, she said. It's not glamorous but it's a start. Rachel smiled faintly. That's all I'm asking. The real challenge she knew would be consistency. Restructuring finances was one thing. Restructuring behavior was another. Still this time Rachel had the reins. And she wasn't letting go. The following weeks were full of awkward adjustments. Patricia started working part-time at a boutique, folding clothes and ringing up customers who had once attended her garden parties. She came home exhausted, often complaining about standing all day and being treated like help. Rachel refused to coddle her. This is what normal people do to survive, she'd say. Welcome to the real world. Olivia's job at the dental office came with a uniform and a strict schedule. She was late twice the first week and burst into tears after her first staff meeting. I didn't know work could be so draining, she admitted during one of their weekly finance reviews. Rachel nodded. Now you know why I didn't have time for gossip and brunches. By the 3rd month something unexpected began to happen. Patricia stopped complaining as much. She started bringing home little stories from the boutique. Funny customers, cute clothes, minor sales victories. Olivia got her first paycheck and proudly showed it to Rachel. It's not much but I earned it. Rachel smiled. That's the whole point. The new family routine was far from perfect but it was real. Budget check-ins every Sunday. Grocery shopping with coupons. Eating at home instead of upscale restaurants. Slowly dignity returned, not from wealth but from effort. Rachel still managed the accounts and monitored every payment. But she noticed a change in her mother and sister. They were finally learning how to be responsible. And more importantly, how to respect her. 6 months after the financial collapse, Rachel called a family meeting in the living room. We've cleared most of the urgent debts, she announced. And the house is safe, for now. But we're not done. Patricia folded her hands in her lap. I know we still have a long way to go. But, thank you, Rachel. Olivia nodded. I was so wrong about you. I used to think you were cold or distant. But you were just working hard. Building something real. Rachel blinked, surprised by the sincerity. I never wanted to be the hero, she said. I just didn't want to be the family embarrassment anymore. You're not, Patricia said quietly. You never were. For the first time in a long while, Rachel felt like she was part of a family again. Not because of what she gave but because of what they finally saw. News of Patricia's job spread quietly through the social circle she once ruled. Some old friends kept their distance, unsure how to react. Others admired her humility but not many. Diane from the club won't speak to me, Patricia told Rachel one day. And what did Diane ever do for you when you were drowning in debt? Rachel asked. Patricia was quiet. Nothing. Then you don't need her. Claire's wedding had to be scaled down dramatically. Gone were the ballroom reservations and fancy catering. They had a small ceremony in a local church, followed by a reception in the backyard. Derek's parents were polite but clearly disappointed. Still, Olivia walked down the aisle with her head high, and her budget balanced. By the end of the year, Rachel's name was still on every account, but the burden no longer felt so heavy. Her mother and sister didn't just rely on her, they listened. They consulted her before making any major decisions. For Christmas, Olivia gifted her a simple leather journal with her initials engraved on the cover. I figured you could use this for your budget tracking, she said with a sheepish grin. Patricia handed her an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. I was wrong about your life, your choices and your strength. Thank you for not giving up on us. Rachel didn't cry often, but she did that night. Because finally, after everything, she felt seen. Rachel reflected on everything that had happened in the past 12 months. She had gone from being the ignored daughter to the backbone of the family. From being shut out to holding the keys, literally and figuratively. Her greatest victory hadn't been rescuing the house. It was standing in her truth, refusing to shrink herself and finally earning respect not by demanding it, but by living it. The work wasn't done. There were still bills to pay, budgets to monitor, and habits to unlearn. But Rachel was no longer alone in carrying the weight. And that made all the difference. On a chilly spring morning, Rachel sat on her balcony with a cup of coffee, the rising sun warming her face. Her phone buzzed, a message from Olivia. Got a raise today. Treated myself to a $6 coffee. Don't worry, I logged it in the budget. Rachel chuckled and shook her head. A year ago they had locked her out of their lives. Now she was the reason their lives were still standing. Not out of revenge. Not out of obligation. But because she knew her worth, and finally so did they. Moral lesson. True strength is knowing your worth even when others don't, and using that strength not to seek revenge, but to lead with wisdom, boundaries, and grace. Remember to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more of this.